The Silk Spinster. Once upon a time there was a peasant. He worked in the woods, and took his oldest daughter along to help him. When the day grew hot, he took off his jacket and laid it in the grass. When his work was finished, he asked his daughter to fetch it for him. She went to it, but there was a worm lying on it. She did not want to pick it up, so she ran back to her father and asked him what she should do. He told her not to be afraid of the worm. She should just throw it aside and bring him his jacket. She did this, and they went home. The next day, the peasant again went to work in the woods, taking his second daughter along. Everything happened as before, and in the end she threw the worm aside, and she and her father returned home together. On the third day, the first daughter was to go along again, but the third daughter asked the father to take her. She wanted to help out like the others. They laughed at her and asked her just how she would be able to help. They had a low opinion of her, and kept her at home, like a Cinderella. But she begged her father so earnestly that he finally said that she might come along. When it was time to go home, her father told her to fetch his jacket. She went to it, and found the worm on it. But she said to it, "Dear little worm, would you like a soft place to lie?" The worm looked at her with bright and friendly eyes, as though it wanted to say, "Yes." Therefore she gathered together some moss, and made him a nice, soft nest. As soon as she had laid him in it, the worm began to speak and asked her, "Would you like to enter my service? All you have to do is carry me about for a few hours each day. For this you will receive a good wage and food and drink as well. If you do this for 3 years, I will be redeemed, because I am an enchanted prince, and then I will marry you." The girl said that she would do it, and the worm said, "Then come here tomorrow at the same time." After that, she went home with her father. Then she said, "I have lived at home for long enough. I am going to try my luck out in the world." They all laughed at her, saying, "You, Cinderella, who would have any use for you?" The girl replied, "I already have a position," and asked her father to allow her to leave. He did not want to give his permission, because even if she did not understand very much, she was still a good worker. Finally, he gave in to her begging, and the next day she set forth. She went into the woods, and soon found the worm. He was very pleased that she had come, and he told her that she should now carry him around a little. That she did, and when the time was up, a splendid castle suddenly appeared. In the castle there was a great hall, with a large table, all decked out with food and drink, more beautiful than anything she had ever seen in her entire lifetime. She ate and drank her fill, and then went to bed. Every day she carried the worm for about an hour or 2, and then went to the castle, where everything was prepared for her, and where she was splendidly provided for. After a year had passed, she asked the worm for permission to visit her father. He agreed, on the condition that she return promptly. She took gold and other precious things for her father and sisters, and went home. When she arrived, with her treasures, the sisters wanted to know where she had gotten it all, and who her master was, but she told them nothing, for the worm had forbidden her to do so. They beat her and scolded her, but she said nothing. The next day she went back into the woods with the worm, and again carried it about for an hour or two each day. At the end of the 2nd year, she once again visited her father and her sisters, and also at the end of the 3rd year. When she left the worm, he ordered her also this last time to return promptly, and she promised to do so. Her father and her sisters insisted that she tell them who her master was and where she worked, and they refused to let her go. Finally, she tore herself away with force. When she returned to the woods, it was too late. The worm was no longer there. Sadly, she looked everywhere, but that castle had disappeared, and the worm as well. For while she was away, his spell had lapsed, and he had turned back into a king, and he was now back at home in his own kingdom. The girl decided to search for him throughout the world. On her way, she came to a hut in a forest where an old woman lived, whom she asked for shelter for the night. The old woman received her in a friendly manner, and the next morning when she was about to leave, gave her 3 apples. She told her that there was a golden spindle in the first one, a golden yarn reel in the second one, and a golden spinning wheel in the third one, and told her whom she would meet, and what she should do. The girl kindly thanked the friendly old woman, and set forth. Many days later, and after she had walked a great distance, she came to a glass mountain. She did not know how she could cross over it, because it was so smooth that she always slid back down. Finally, she saw a smithy not far away. She went there and had horseshoes attached to her hands and knees, and climbed over the mountain. She came to a great city. This was where the king lived, who had been the worm that she had carried about every day. He was already married. He had a beautiful wife, and had long since forgotten the girl. She disguised herself, and went to the castle, where she hired herself out as a silk spinster. On the first day, she opened the first apple that the old woman in the woods had given her. She took out the golden spindle. When the queen saw it, she liked it very much, and wanted to buy it from the girl. "No," she said, "it is not for sale, but I will give it to you if you let me sleep with the king 1 night." "Why not?" thought the queen, and gave her promise. As evening approached, she gave the king a sleeping potion, and when he was fast asleep, she sent for the silk spinster, and led her into the king's bedroom. She sat next to his bed and cried bitterly. "Now I know that thanklessness is the way of the world," she said. 3 years I carried you about as a worm. For your sake I received harsh blows and harsh words from my father and sisters. I had horseshoes attached to my hands and knees in order to climb over a glass mountain. And now you have forgotten everything, and taken another wife." But the king was so fast asleep that he did not understand a thing. At dawn, the queen came and led the Silk Spinster out again. Sadly, she took the second apple, broke it open, and took out the golden yarn reel. When the queen saw it, she admired it greatly, and asked the girl to sell it to her. Once again, she said that it was not for sale, but could be earned if she were allowed to sleep with the king for another night. The queen gave her promise, and everything happened as during the first night. The king lay in deep sleep, and no amount of crying and complaining could waken him. However, one of the king's servants had seen the queen bring the spinster into the king's bedroom. He was curious, and listened to everything that the Silk Spinster said. The next day, he told the king what he had seen and heard. But that morning, the queen had once again led the Silk Spinster out of the king's bedroom. In desperation, the girl opened her last apple, the one with the golden spinning wheel. When the queen saw it, she said she would let her sleep with the king yet another night if she would give her the golden spinning wheel. The girl agreed, and that evening once again gave her husband a sleeping potion. But he only pretended to drink it. He secretly poured it out, then lay down and pretended to be asleep. Then the queen fetched the Silk Spinster and led her into the king's bedroom. The girl sat sadly next to the king's bed and cried bitterly. "Now I know that thanklessness is the way of the world," she said. "3 years I carried you about as a worm. For your sake I received blows and harsh words to my father and sisters. I had horseshoes attached to my hands and knees in order to climb over the glass mountain. You have forgotten everything and taken another wife." The king listened silently to every word, but pretended to be asleep. The next day he ordered a large, festive meal, and he invited the Silk Spinster to take her place at his right side. When everyone was seated, he said, "I want to present all of you with a question, and ask for your honest and open answer. Many years ago, I lost the key to my chest, and therefore had a new one made. But now I have found the old one. Which one should I use from now on?" "The old one," they all said, as with one voice. "The old one always fits better." "Now," said the king, "the Silk Spinster, who is sitting here at my right side, took care of me for 3 years, while I was an enchanted worm. She suffered greatly on my behalf. Therefore, I would like to leave my wife for as long as the first one is alive, and marry her." And that is what he did, and thus the Silk Spinster became queen.